The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
We are back. Yes, indeed. Big, sexy Harry Broadhurst, the Heartbreak Kid, Sleepy Joe, otherwise known as Mark Radulich. The IndySiders, and this is show number 2 covering WrestleMania weekend. Myself and I'm now going to refer to him as the Charlotte Flair to my Tiffany Stratton, Robert Winfrey. We covered WrestleMania weekend on Monday. We did the SmackDown Go Home show, the Stand and Deliver. Neither one of us watched the Hall of Fame, but we did mention it. Nights 1 and 2 of WrestleMania. That's all in the archives now. You can check it out. I clipped our conversation about Say His Name and He Appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. I clipped that for TikTok, and I threw an extra clip of that onto YouTube, so you can check that out as well. So, Harry, good to see you again, my friend.
Greetings, salutations, whatnot.
Thank you, sir. You allegedly watched WrestleMania. What did you think of nights 1 and 2?
So there were definitely some swings and misses, but I think a lot of what they were looking for landed. El Grande Americano and Phoenix was actually really good. It would have been a little bit better if they'd have had more time to put into a build for that rather than just kind of throwing it out there because Mysterio got injured. But I do think that Gable style, his mat-based style, as well as his ability to fly, blends him very well with the luchadors. So him getting that kind of an angle there where he's working with guys like Penta, guys like Shima Zion, whatever, Joakim Wild, Cruz del Toro, Rey Mysterio, people of that ilk.
Dragon
it works
Lee,
well for him. Dragon Lee, exactly.
Yeah,
it works well for him because he's very well based in that kind of matchup, going back to even their time in American Alpha back in NXT when he was teaming with Jason Jordan, who I found out, interestingly enough, was the producer for the El Grande Americano Rey Fenix match.
Oh, he's working as a backstage agent now?
He is.
Good for him. Glad he's still getting work. Yeah, I liked El Grande Americano versus Rey Fenix. As I mentioned to Robert, the mark-out moment of the night, besides the Joe Hendry thing, which I have no problem with. I had no complaints. I did a whole thing on this. But, Robert, being in the bubble that he lives in, was like, no, I watched all the wrestling ever, and I can explain how, Ioki, what the hell's her name?
Io Sky.
Thank you. Io Sky was going to win. And I said, well, Harry and I had a whole conversation about this where we were arguing over whether or not it was going to be Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair. So some of us thought differently. But, it's funny because that conversation very much informed my reaction to Io Sky winning that match. That got a legit holy shit chant out of me and my kid. So that was a fun moment.
I really liked the finish too with catapult into the buckle because it looked like Io hit flush, and I'm like, well, she's fucked. And then just a few moments later, you see the over the moonsault breaking up the pin attempt by Belair in order to steal the 3 count there. The other match from night 2 that I really enjoyed as well was the IC title 4-way. I just want to say how much Dominic Mysterio has stepped up over the course of the last calendar year. He might be arguably the most over wrestler in the company right now.
You read my mind there. I actually said that to Robert. I said Dominic Mysterio has somehow become the late great Eddie Guerrero. Like, he wrestles just like him. You know, Robert mentioned like the mullet and the mustache was not by accident, but like, he's got his mannerisms down. He's got his wrestling style down. Like when he did Three Amigos, I was like, wow, like because I don't watch enough of the product for this to have clicked until then. But as I said on Monday, I was like, I watched him wrestle in that Fatal 4, which was excellent, by the way. And I was like, oh my God, it's like watching Eddie wrestle again. And that made me feel good.
It reminds me a lot of WCW Eddie, which I think was some of his best work.
Oh, for sure.
And especially with like the greasy mullet and the dirty porn star stash.
What did you think of the triple threat at the end of night 1 with Rollins, Punk, and Roman, specifically Paul Heyman giving double nut jobs?
Well, we talked about a little bit about the fact that Heyman might turn, and that is what came to fruition there. The thing that surprised me even more is Braun Breaker joining up with Heyman as one of the new Paul Heyman guys on Monday Night Raw, which I thought was really interesting because I think that this could be the thing that establishes Braun Breaker as a main eventer.
We'll see. Robert made a point of saying Paul Heyman has made just as many guys as he's not made, you know?
I mean, you look at a guy like Curtis Axel, who had all the talent in the world and just never connected.
Yeah. At some point, the fans got to believe in you or not, you know. A lot of guys have really given it their best shot and just nothing happened for them. And other guys just fell into it backwards. My TikTok feed has been filled with dangerous alliance posts, and so people want to see Rollins, Braun Breaker, Becky. There was 1 or 2 other ones that they keep like changing in and out of there.
The big name that I keep hearing is Karrion Kross, which, if you think about the promo that Kross cut on the podcast that Sam Roberts and Megan Morant do, it would kind of tie in. It would kind of tie into that theory there. I would love it personally. I think Kross is horrendously underrated.
I remember Karrion Kross when he was doing GCW stuff right before he came over, and like he did a Bloodsport, and I fell in love with him then. And it's just never, you know, he did some of the early NXT stuff was good, and then I don't remember what happened, if he got injured or what.
I will tell you, I still need to watch this year's Bloodsport, but I know he has a match on it.
Yeah, it was good. It's good stuff. They used him well. All right, so let's talk about, before we get into what we're actually here to talk about tonight, which is GCW, The Collective, Las Vegas 2025. Give me your quick notes on the John Cena, Cody Rhodes match.
I get what they were going for. It wasn't the right match to have in front of 60,000 people.
Yeah, Robert said something somewhat similar to that. He was basically like, when you're the heel wrestler, you wrestle more methodically, you wrestle slower, you do things to make yourself hated by the fans. And to your point, I don't know how well that works in a stadium full of casuals.
And that's the problem that I have, is the fact that there are so many people there that are going to watch maybe 1 or 2 wrestling shows a year that see the names John Cena and Cody Rhodes, and they think, all right, this is why I'm buying a ticket to the show. And then to go out and have that particular performance on the grandest stage of them all, I think was a disappointment. I'm not saying that it was necessarily a bad thing for Cena to win the way that he did. I have no problem with the way the finish played out. I do have a bigger problem with making Travis Scott the focal point of the finish.
Well, yeah, I don't want to spend the GCW Las Vegas Collective podcast tearing into The Rock, but I could. So I'll just leave it at that. I think The Rock's being a giant baby. That said, something I thought about after Robert and I got done recording our 12-hour podcast. I thought about The Rock and Austin at WrestleMania 17, quite frankly, I thought about The Rock and Austin at WrestleMania 15. It was balls out. They hit every finisher ever. Now, granted, it was 100 years ago, but still, I don't remember there being that kind of I'm the heel, so I will wrestle methodically and put the babyface in peril and all of that. The kind of psychological stuff we're talking about with John Cena and Cody Rhodes. I remember The Rock and Austin going 100 miles an hour, and everyone remembers the Austin heel at the end of WrestleMania 17, but there was so much that went into that match before that. It was insane. And I'm torn because I can see why Cena did what he did, and why Cody went along with it. But also, I think a better match for that crowd would have been the tempo and pace and intensity of Austin Rock at WrestleMania 17 or WrestleMania 15 for that matter.
It reminded me of a slowed down version of Austin and Brett from 14 or from 13, excuse me.
The one I used was Randy Orton and Triple H after the home invasion.
Oh, right. WrestleMania 25, which should have been a slugfest rather than a methodical wrestling contest because of the fact that you broke into my house. I'm going to beat your ass.
Yeah. I love the Larry Zonka, the late Larry Zonka used to.
May he rest in peace.
Yes. It's like, we're going to have a blood feud. You have pissed on my grave and raped my mother, and you've done
we start with a collar and elbow tie-up.
And we start with a collar and elbow tie-up. It's like,
I remember it well.
What are we doing here? So
I miss Larry.
So do I. Your overall thoughts on WrestleMania in 10 words or less?
Hype was high. Expectations were mostly met, but a few sore thumbs.
Yeah.
Real quick for NXT Stand and Deliver as well, I just wanted to say, know who came out of Stand and Deliver looking like the biggest star of the weekend? Sol Ruca.
Oh, see, I don't know. I mean, kind of, maybe. I mean, like, I like her look. Not enough to watch NXT. I'll wait for her to show up on the main roster if she's still wearing her. If she's still wearing her Fred Flintstone outfit.
That crowd was going crazy for her at the end of that ladder match. And in fairness,
hang on, I landed in a slightly different spot because for me, the big star that came out of NXT was Stephanie Vaquer.
Well, Stephanie also had an opportunity to showcase herself on Raw too, which I think she took full advantage of. The match she had with Io on Raw was really good. The other person from NXT who stood out, we knew what Obafemi is capable of. We know Trick Williams is going to be a big deal on the main roster. I want to give credit to Javon Evans for that triple threat performance because the young OG stepped up and showed out.
Yeah, I was not expecting a lot out of him. I thought this was too much too soon, and he was able to keep up with Obafemi and Trick Williams. Trick Williams has got to be called up to the main roster any day now, yeah?
Oh, I'm thinking him getting thrown out of the building on NXT this past Tuesday was his swan song.
WWE always knows how to promote their stars. Anyway.
Well, because he got in the face of Obafemi and Joe Hendry on NXT. Yes, say his name and he appeared again.
We believe in Joe Hendry. All right. I said I wanted to be out of here in an hour, and we've got 45 minutes, so let's do this. All right. Harry, full disclosure, Harry saw some. I think I saw most of them. I don't think I got all the way through this. So some of these we're just going to briefly touch on.
Real quick.
Some of these we'll be able to talk at length. Yes, Harry Broadhurst with the Streaming Boy podcast.
Real quick, I just want to say before we get started on a wrestling news note, rest in peace, Steve Mongo McMichael.
Oh, did he die today?
Earlier today. Jarrett Payton confirmed it on Twitter at 5:27 p.m. Steve passed away from his battle with ALS, aka Lou Gehrig's disease.
Rest in peace, Mongo McMichael. All right.
Indeed.
So the first one I'm going to bring up here is Defy Living Proof. I think I saw this. I was probably only half paying attention to it.
I did watch this show, and I have a few thoughts that I think kind of stood out to me. For one, how the hell are the Rock and Roll Express still a thing in 2025?
Can we talk about that? There was a couple of guys on throughout the collective. Now, the thing about the collective is you'll see a handful of people show up on almost every single one of these events. -1, +1 here or there.
Right.
And The Rock and Ricky Morton, I think it was, showed up at least 1 or 2 more times. I can't
Ricky
remember the guys.
Ricky Morton was booked on at least like 4 collective shows. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like it's just what we're gonna when we get to the clusterfuck, which I think we're gonna talk about last. But
Fair enough.
They make some interesting decisions in GCW, and one of those interesting decisions is let's book 80-year-old men like they're peak Shawn Michaels.
Are you referring to the Senior Scramble?
That I'm referring to how the Rock and Roll Express were used on this. We're acting like Ricky Morton could conceivably in real life keep up with any of the young guys, and he can't. He just can't.
Yeah, I felt kind of bad for Midnight Heat because I thought a win for them over Rock and Roll on WrestleMania weekend could have made them as a legitimate indie tag team sensation, but it just wasn't meant to be.
There is no argument that I buy that there's a reason to push the Rock and Roll Express in the year of our Lord 2025. None. Zero.
I can't say I disagree with you. My other big takeaway from this show was, man, is Kenta turned into a disappointment to watch nowadays.
I liked
the match with Mansoor was okay, but the problem that I had with it is it was just okay. When you think about what Kenta used to be, and this is going to be one of my few negative rants of this whole conversation. If you think about what Kenta used to be, going back to his time in Japan before he came over to the States, his time in Ring of Honor, and then when he was tearing shit up in NXT, to see Kenta as a shell of what he used to be is very disappointing.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to figure out where they don't have the actual match listed of Mance versus Kenta, but that's what's on the poster.
It was third from the top. That match, then the tag title match or the tag team match with the Rock and Roll Express, and then the main event.
Because I liked Mansoor, and I could have sworn I saw this, but I can't. I don't see it in the results here. I'm on ProWrestlingFandom.com.
I would use Cage Match.
Well, you would you? Did you watch the WrestleCon Mark Hitchcock Memorial Super Show?
I have not had a chance to watch it yet. I have heard about a couple of the matches from it. I've heard that Mickie James versus Makai Ito was something. I don't know what something is in this instance. I've heard very mixed reviews of this match, so I'm kind of curious to see it and form an opinion for myself. But I did not get to this. So full disclosure, my stepdad has been in the hospital for the last 2 weeks. So I've been spending a lot of time bouncing back and forth between home and the hospital, just trying to spend time with him. And then obviously with it being WrestleMania weekend, I was out with friends and stuff for the shows. I go over to, I have a whole pay-per-view crew that I watch the shows with. And one of my friends from the pay-per-view crew ended up in the hospital on Saturday night. So it was a weekend, to say the least.
All right. So I'm on Cage Match. Since you insisted on this.
Yes.
And I see Joey Janela Spring Break and Clusterfuck Forever. Wait, no, that's...
You have to search for the, you have to check by date or just search for Defy in the search bar. Search for the Defy promotion.
Okay. Okay. This has it by date.
Yeah.
That's what screwed me up. Okay. I'm fine now. Alrighty. So I did watch this. The GCW presents the IG tournament the championship tournament. That was the 16th. The first round was Jordan Oasis defeats Freedom Ramsey. Zara Zakir defeats Izzy Moreno. That I will actually want to talk about because that and seeing Kylie Ray was about the only thing that stood out to me in this whole thing. So Izzy Moreno was the fan, the little kid fan that
Bailey fan,
NXT,
yes.
Yeah, that used to go to the NXT. They used to go to the NXT shows and cheer Bailey on. Well, she's all grown up now. She's a real girl even. And now she's out there wrestling, and this was her, one of the auditions to be possibly a trainee for the WWE. I thought she looked pretty good here. I think if she can, I think the WWE would be remiss to not give her a solid chance because I think she has a great story. And I'm going to link this to a current news story, which is Bailey's got, like a year and a half left on her contract, and she's already making noise that she's probably not going to resign, that she's going to move on and go do something else. And I don't necessarily think it's even in wrestling because maybe she goes to AEW, or maybe she decides she wants to be an adult now and go try something else. Go to Hollywood, where which is now in Georgia.
She's been posting more and more pictures of her family and her young niece and her young nephew lately. So I think it might be a situation of Bayley might be wanting a family of her own.
Ronda Rousey took years off the UFC just to stay home and be a mom, and nothing wrong with that. I think if you go out there, it's something that I've always had. I don't disagree a lot with Jim Cornette, but his thing with Becky Lynch when she had a baby, he's like, "You're the biggest star in the company. Why are you taking time to be a mom?" And it's like, who the fuck are you to judge that decision?
Because not all of us can have hot tub time machine with other wrestlers with their wife, allegedly.
I don't see you judgmental pain in my ass how one has anything to do with the other. But
I was making the point that Cornette's personal life decisions aren't exactly the wisest either.
That is a fair and better way of saying that.
The people who know will get the reference that I made.
I got the reference and thought it was utterly unnecessary. But my point is,
to be fair, I'm known not to be a Cornette fan, so
okay, keep politics out of my podcast.
Has nothing to do with his politics. Has everything to do with his opinions on his antiquated opinions on professional wrestling.
Second night of this. Okay. Anyway,
don't you compare me to Winfrey?
Then don't act like him. So
I will be the Nia Jax telling Charlotte to go fuck himself.
The point that we've lost is that if Bayley feels like she has gone and done everything there is to do, she has done her bit for God and country, and she wants to go home and be a mom, I am 100% in her corner. I also am in complete agreement that I don't think there's anything left for her to do. At some point, there's only so many times you can win it. You can win a title, or headline something. And that's the other thing. It's like if her thing is kind of like a CM Punk, like I just want to headline a WrestleMania, sweetie. It took CM Punk going to AEW and coming back, and to come back from an injury for him to get that spot, and only because WrestleMania is 2 nights long now, or it wouldn't have happened either.
Well, I feel like Bayley also has a legitimate bitch in the fact that she was written out of the card at the last moment in order to have Becky's return at her expense.
Right. Anyway, we were talking about Izzy Moreno an hour and a half ago.
Well, back to Bayley and Izzy and the connection there. So your thought about Izzy getting a look? I think Izzy can get a look. I don't think she's ready yet, and that's because I don't.
Ready though. They have Evolve. They have.
She doesn't have the reps yet. She doesn't have the reps yet. She doesn't have the character. She also can't legally travel to some states and wrestle yet because she hasn't turned 18.
Oh, she's not. Well, on the other hand,
she doesn't turn 18 until the beginning of next month.
Well, as opposed to the kid at the Clusterfuck Forever won't turn 18 for another decade.
Brody Jr.'s 14, sir.
My ass, he's 14.
Brody Jr. is 14.
Get the fuck out of here. All right. In any case, was there anything? Did you see any part of the ID tournament?
I did. I watched the full show. Do you know who stood out as the biggest star of the entire thing to me? Zeta Steele.
Oh, yeah? You think so?
The match she had with Kylie and the personality that she showed with Swipe right there, I think they might have something with Zeta Steele. Plus, they love their bad girls there. You know who she reminded me of? She reminded me of a younger Alexa Bliss.
That's fair. All right, so that was the ID tournament. Next, we have Bloodsport. Is the next one on this list.
I have not had a chance to watch Bloodsport yet. It is on the to-watch list, however. I will give brief thoughts the next time we reconvene.
Sure. I like this show. Bloodsport's always a lot of fun, considering there's so much wrestling WrestleMania weekend. A lot of it tends to blend together, especially with these collective shows, which is not the first time you and I have said that. A lot of the stuff tends to bleed together. But Bloodsport stands out because it's so different. It was nice to see Shinya Aoki again. Little surprised Charlie Dempsey beat him, but whatever. It's not going to hurt anybody. Karrion Kross defeated JR Kratos. I was not surprised by that. I was reminded that Timothy Thatcher is no longer wrestling on TV on NXT, from what I understand. So it was nice to see him.
He's on Evolve.
Is he? Okay. I love Timothy Thatcher when he was on NXT. So I was actually talking to one of the things I was saying to Robert was I have very fond memories of when Pete Dunne beat Walter for the NXT UK title in New York, WrestleMania weekend at Stand and Deliver. And I've never liked Pete Dunne since. So so Pete Dunne versus Timothy Thatcher was good. I think the right guy won with Pete Dunne beating him, but Natty Neidhart versus Yamashita, I did not love. I you haven't seen it, so you can't say one way or the other. But I expected a little bit more out of Natty Neidhart here, and I don't know. This was not great.
See, I hear the names Natty Neidhart and Miwu Yamashita, and I actually expect a decent match out of it because Miwu's been tearing it up in GCW as kind of the death match girl. And I think that Natty hasn't gotten nearly the opportunity to show what she's capable of. She's just kind of there as that veteran hand in the women's division in the WWE. We don't really see what she's capable of anymore in terms of in-ring bell-to-bell action. So my expectations for that match were pretty high. You're telling me it was disappointing?
I don't think it was as good as I thought it was going to be. I didn't say it was bad. I just said I think I expected more, and it wasn't there. Because a lot of times with these Bloodsport matches, people who have really sound technical wrestling let that shine. Got even Moxley when he did it. He couldn't rely entirely on his garbage wrestling style, so he had to be a real boy and wrestle like an adult. And this event tends to bring that out of people. And so I was expecting a little bit more for Natty Neidhart and didn't really get it. Shayna Baszler, on the other hand, I think I don't know what they're going to do. What's left for her to do in WWE, and I wish Bloodsport was enough for her to make a living because I think that's her best thing. Her being with her UFC background, that should surprise absolutely nobody.
Well, and also look at the NXT Underground match she had against Lola Vice that was critically acclaimed as well.
Yeah, that's my point. Like, I don't think Shayna. If you look at the kind of women that are currently on TV in both NXT and WWE main roster, Shayna Baszler looks like none of them, and I don't think she fits. I don't think she fits in very well.
Other than her tag team partner Zoe Stark, who actually can fly as well, in addition to doing that grounded battle style.
It was nice to see Zack Sabre Jr. here. He beat Jonathan Gresham. However, this was another one where when I saw it was, we were getting Zack Sabre Jr. versus Jonathan Gresham, I was like, oh, this should be balls out. This should be amazing. They went 20 minutes. I think they tried. I don't think either one of them knew what to do with this. I was going to say,
when I think Zack Sabre Jr. versus Jonathan Gresham, I don't think Bloodsport for that match. I think of that as like a spring break match.
Yeah. Gabe Kidd defeated Josh Barnett in just under 10 minutes, and this only shocked me because I can't.
All the spoilers.
Okay. Josh Barnett doesn't really put people over on this event, so I was a little shocked here. But good for Gabe Kidd. So that was Bloodsport. It was good. It's one of my favorite things of WrestleMania weekend. I'll generally speaking watch Bloodsport whenever they do one.
Gabe Kidd has been very hot lately. I feel like he could be the next guy coming up from the indies that gets a look from one of the two major promotions.
Okay, so next on the list here for cage match is Spring Break. This was main evented by Sabu, defeating Joey Janela in less than 20 minutes. I watched this match, then they showed highlights of it during the Clusterfuck, and oh my god, how one of these guys isn't dead is beyond me.
My personal feelings towards the man aside.
Yeah, I was waiting to have to sit through another hostage where you or other people get on the lectern and have to, yell and scream from the pulpit against my will about Sabu. So if you got it in you, get it out.
My personal feelings aside, Sabu showed up and showed out at Spring Break.
Oh, yeah, he looked motivated for a 90-year-old man.
I mean, he moved like a 90-year-old man, but he was bumping his ass off. That spot that he took through the ropes onto the board to the floor.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought killed him.
He just fucking smacked.
He went through the ropes, and I don't think he realized how much momentum he had because he hit that floor, and he folded up. I was like, oh, he's dead. They're going to have to cart his ass out.
And then they go outside and pick him up, and you can see the blood spatter in the shape of how he was laying on the floor.
Yeah,
fucking
that was a rough.
gross.
That was a rough fucking spot. This wins when this ended when Sabu put Joey Janela into the box of barbed wire, and I have look, I don't like Joey Janela at all, but I have to say, like, him screaming in the barbed wire made me feel bad. I was like, oh, you, like, he wanted to do it, and it's so funny because the next thing that happened, and I thought this was interesting, and Harry, I don't always want your opinion on things. However, there is occasion that I do. And that was the correct response. Thank you. And on this one, I am curious to get your 10-word take. Let me set this up for the people. So the match ends. They've eviscerated Joey Janela, and then all the King's Horses and all the Kingsmen put him back together again. And he says, "Hey Sabu, last year we tried to put you in the Hardcore Wrestling Hall of Fame, and
Independent Hard Wrestling.
Okay, and you didn't show. So you showed. It was questionable whether you'd even show up this year, and this seems to be the basis of this entire feud. But you're here now, and you had a great match, and I love you, brother. And here's your plaque from last year. Want to give me some insight as to what happened last year besides Sabuing?
No, it's exactly what you just said it was. He decided that the money wasn't right for him to go to the Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame, so he no-showed it. He stayed in his hotel room.
So he agreed to come?
He agreed to be inducted. He accepted the booking fee and then no-showed the event. It was Sabu being Sabu.
Yeah, that's a dick move. If someone
100%.
says the agreed upon price is X, and then you decide at the last minute to, and I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but this is why I've always kind of defended the Ultimate Warrior with SummerSlam, because at that point he had been denied money several times, and then got to SummerSlam and was like, "What the fuck? I'm not going to wrestle. You won't pay me what you're supposed to be paying me. What you agreed to pay me."
He didn't start holding up promoters until after he left the WWF.
And that is not what I'm talking about, sir. We are here to put the Ultimate Warrior on trial for SummerSlam. Sorry, I've already done that.
No, I agree. And similar to the Jeff Jarrett situation, too, at No Mercy in 99.
I was going to say, that's the Good Housekeeping match, right? Yeah, I was on Jeff's side. Yep. If you're that dumb, I don't always get on JR, but if your whole fucking job is to monitor contracts and re-sign people or let them go, but you're the gatekeeper of contracts, and you book Jarrett in a hardcore match against a young up-and-comer China and don't know his contract expires, you idiot. Like, that is... I'll never understand how people keep their job.
Not just that, you put the fucking IC title on him in the process.
Yes. Yeah. That is how Jim Ross survived that and not got fired. There are things I have seen Vince McMahon do to people, and I'm like, you're not a nice person, and you deserve everything you've got coming to you. And I was saying that back then. I don't mean, now, duh. But I was saying it back. I was saying that back when there were only whispers that he was a rapist. On that one, I was completely like, why? How do you not fire Jim Ross for that? What a public blunder. But yeah, so Sabu's a dick is the point of all that.
Yeah, the general point there is, he completely no-showed after taking the payment for the Hall of Fame, for the Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame ceremony. He was supposed to be on spring break last year as well, and just completely no-showed.
Can I tell you, I think Megan Bain is hot and wasting her time in AEW.
1,000% agreed.
Yeah.
Also, I want to know what is in Joey Janela's aura that hot women keep falling for him.
Yeah, I want to know what deal he worked out with the devil.
Penelope Ford, Megan Bain, Brandy Loren. It doesn't make sense.
Did Megan Bain used to bang Joey Janela?
Who?
Did Megan Bain used to bang
She
Joey
still
Janela?
is. They're currently dating.
Say banging, Harry. Say banging.
They're fucking.
Thank you. Jesus Christ.
You're welcome.
Well.
The point being is that
let me do this for Joey Janela if he's banging Megan Bain.
round of applause.
You're a better man than I, and I don't say that. I don't say that easily. Yeah, I watched Megan Bayne this weekend, and I didn't realize she was in AEW because I don't watch the product anymore for the most part. So I looked her up really quick. So I had this moment where I'm like, I looked at her and I'm like, who is this tall, built, gorgeous goddess? Where are you from? And so they kept calling her the Mega Sis. So I looked that up, and it's like, no, that's Megan Bayne. And I look up Megan Bayne, and I go, she's in All Elite Wrestling, but she shows up on these indie gigs. And I was like, and I looked at her and I went, someone break this girl out of prison. She at 5'11" and that hot, she needs to be on the WWE roster today.
Speaking of Megan, her match with Bozilla from Spring Break was actually pretty good too.
Yes, that's why I brought that up. That was also
the two girls having kind of the female version of a hoss fight is, a hossette fight.
It could just be a hoss fight. You don't have to feminize things.
Anyways, the point being is that those two beat the shit out of each other for like 15 minutes, and it was very entertaining.
Yeah, no, Megan Bayne's really good.
It was my first time seeing Bozilla, and I came away really impressed with her. And I've seen Megan for a while now. Her stuff with Atticus Cogar in GCW earlier this year was really good too. We kind of touched on some of that when we did our The People versus GCW review when we came back to the IndySiders.
So you brought up the senior scramble. It was Damien 666, who's 100. George South, who I swear to God I thought was fucking
dead.
Yeah. No, God, what's oh gosh, the Four Horsemen, the coke addict.
Tully Blanchard.
Thank you. I swear to God, I thought that was old man Tully Blanchard, and I'm like, that's George South, and I'm like, oh God. First of all, don't send old men out in singlets like that. You perverts, you abusers. My God.
Did you hear a commentary give credit to whose idea this actually was? And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. MLJ.
Anyway,
the guy who usually does the ring announcing.
So Kerry Morton is what, the son of Ricky Morton?
Ricky, yeah, he's Ricky's son, Robert's nephew.
So he needs to hit the gym, but other than that, I think he's got, if he cannot do stupid stuff, probably has a future in this business in some big name promotion.
I disagree. I think Kerry Morton's biggest enemy is Kerry Morton.
I preambled to that with, if he can stay away from doing stupid stuff.
Well, he can't, apparently.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, Morton's had opportunities in both of the major promotions, and from what I understand, has rubbed people the wrong way.
Like, on a scale of 0 to Terry Hart, how badly?
Not Teddy Hart, but up somewhere in the middle zone of that.
Okay, fair enough.
Not Teddy Hart or Ryback, but, closer to like a Thunder Rosa.
Okay, fair. Anything else about Joey Janela's spring break before we move on to the next one?
No, I don't think I have anything else there. The only other thing that I wanted to talk about with relation to GCW was Big Gay Brunch, so we'll get to that in a little bit.
All right. Did you watch The Heels Have Eyes?
I did not.
Okay, neither did I. Moving on. Yeah, let me get to Big Gay.
The card for the Hills Have Eyes show does look interesting, so I will probably give it a look later on.
All right. So as I was telling Harry before the show, a lot of GCW I had on while I was doing something else. I was either doing a podcast, or I was editing, or NXT was on, or WrestleMania was on, or whatever. So a lot of this stuff I kind of caught with the corner of my eye. I would have liked to have watched more of Big Gay Brunch than I ended up seeing because it was on at the same time as NXT. So, I'm kind of split vision going on there, and I was paying more attention to NXT and my kids than I was Big Gay Brunch. The beginning of Big Gay Brunch got the biggest laugh out of my kids because you had the one drag queen come out, and then another drag queen came out, and the one drag queen, they were doing the Real Housewives of San Francisco. They were just pulling wigs off each other, and my daughter was like, my daughter, very, very much an ally of the LGBTQI community, as all good girls should be, looks at me and looks at the TV, looks back at me, and she says, well, no one should pull off a drag queen's wig. That's just wrong. She was very invested in this.
I I got nothing. My disdain, I've made very clear my public disdain for Pollo Del Mar. I don't find her entertaining. I don't think she's a good commentator. I don't think she's a good manager.
Okay.
But I do like Val Capone though. She's not bad. A little screamy for my liking, but not bad.
So I got to see Paro back. He defeated Brick Savage, Max the Impaler, and Richard Holiday. This was good. This was a little less than 10 minutes. It's always fun to see Power wrestle. Zack Sabre Jr. defeated Kid Bandit, to which I say, Zack Sabre Jr. Part of the LGBTQI community?
No.
Or
ally.
Just an ally. Okay, well, that's good. Well, good for him. I'm glad he was on the show. I'm glad he was able to be a part of it.
It was a dream match for Kid Bandit, who was coming back from injury. Bandit was actually making a really big name for herself in 2023 before she suffered a torn ACL that put her out of action. Just recently returned to wrestling a couple of months ago, and the ZSJ match was one of their dream matches. So Big Gay Brunch made that happen. I actually thought those two had a hell of a match.
Is Sonny Kiss still an AEW wrestler,
No.
Or is that done now? That's done. Okay. Well, it was nice to see Sonny. It was nice to see Sonny Kiss again. I used to get a kick out of what are we calling Sonny Kiss? Girl or he or him? He or she?
She.
I enjoyed Sonny Kiss in her early run with Joey Janela on AEW TV before Jim Cornette screamed her off television. But Sonny Kiss actually looks like she's put on a bit of musculature. She used to be a little bit skinnier.
Definitely bulked up a little bit.
Yeah, her body looked good, and she had a really good match with Abaddon. And I thought they put together a pretty killer match on this thing.
Who is also done with AEW as of a couple of weeks ago.
My memory of her being in AEW was you telling me she's done with AEW.
She had a few with the Halloween themed matches against one of them was against Thunder Rosa, one of them was against Britt Baker, but she wasn't used much.
Yeah. Her and Sonny Kiss, I think, had the best match on the card besides anything involving Paro. What'd you think of Big Gay Brunch?
I thought Effy and Dark Sheik was fantastic. I really enjoyed the story that the Effy Dark Sheik match told.
Is it just me, or have they not done Effy versus Dark Sheik before?
Not for the GCW heavyweight title. And the importance of this here is, when you think about it, is I know you said you were only kind of half watching because it ran opposite Stand and Deliver. I was able to dedicate my full attention to the show as I watched it on demand later on. And one of the coolest things about the match was getting a chance to hear Allison Catch on commentary, who's like the third person who was the third person in that trio coming up through the ranks in GCW, and kind of giving her insight as to why Effy was able to do what Effy was able to do in his retention of the title there. The fact that Effy was willing to stoop to a level that Dark Sheik may have been not willing to stoop to, because Sheik hit
real quick. How is Allie Catch's leg?
Recovering, still going to be out for a couple more months.
Okay, poor girl. Anyway, back to Dark Sheik versus Effy.
For the first time ever, the GCW World Heavyweight titles defended at Big Gay Brunch, and it was the only defense of the collective.
Oh, that is an interesting detail.
So, and then there was one particular moment where Allison points out that Effy says something that kind of proved the point of Allison turning on Effy. Effy, Dark Sheik kicks out of something. I don't remember what it was specifically. And then Effy yells at Dark Sheik, "Stay down. This is my show." And then Allison says, "You can kind of see the facade of Sir Effington fading."
Gotcha. What little I remember of Effy versus Dark Sheik was pretty good.
The finish was really good too. I liked "Today You Die," the sit out Michinoku driver that Sheik does. And then Effy was able to leverage Sheik back into a pin off of it there. And then you can kind of say that there are those that'll bitch about the fact that the finisher was directly countered into the finish. I would argue that with as much experience as Effy has teaming with Dark Sheik, he's seen that move so many times that he's able to come up with a weakness in the landing or in the cradle out of the landing that he was able to reverse the momentum into the cover. I thought that was a really well done finish too.
So the next one is TJPW versus DDT versus GCW. What I remember of this is John Wayne Murdoch and Matt Tremont defeating Mance Warner and Shunmura Katsumata. That was really good. It was a little less than 10 minutes, and it was about the only thing other than Jack Cartwheel was there that I remember about this entire show. It was on in the background. I was barely paying any attention to it.
I've never been a big DDT fan. I don't watch a lot of Joshi. And it's nothing against Joshi workers. I have a language divide there where I need to be.
I have to say this. So this was my daughter's first experience with the Up girls, who she thought were fantastic. Other than that, go on.
Who were then in the clusterfuck as well.
Oh, we're going to talk about that momentarily.
But so my issue with Pararesu in general is the language divide for me. I have a problem with it.
Okay.
Seeing these stars in American shows makes it a little bit more palatable for me because I'm able to have commentary kind of tell me this person's this person does this, they do this because of this. You get an idea and a sense of who the characters are when you get the Americanized commentary, which was one of my biggest issues getting into New Japan for the longest time. Okay. So I do appreciate getting to see the foreign promotions as part of the collective, even if it's not necessarily going to be my cup of tea moving forward.
Okay. So I told Harry I didn't want to go more than an hour. We will go as long as we need to go because we need to have a discussion. And that discussion is Clusterfuck Forever. Now I know we talked about this last year. The Clusterfuck was Joey Janela's Spring Break Part 2. And this year, they gave it its own freaking event. It was in the middle of the night, just like the last one was. And having had this conversation with the Harry Broadhurst of the Screaming Boy podcast, I understood what it was I was watching when I got engaged with the Clusterfuck Forever earlier today. I understand what this is now. I was ready. I was buckled in. And the first thing I will tell you, Harry, answer this question for the court. Did the people in high school who were both theater people and athletes go into indie pro wrestling, specifically GCW? Because the Clusterfuck Forever was not a match. If you call it a wrestling match, you don't know what wrestling is. And I mean that in the professional and the amateur sense. This was
theater,
performance art. This was like someone took a Broadway musical and an Andy Kaufman happening and made it have violent, drug-fueled love, and this was its crack-addled offspring.
The clusterfuck is best described as wrestling on an acid trip.
The fact that you use the word wrestling is insulting to generations.
There were moments of wrestling throughout the clusterfuck.
If that's what you want to call it. Harry Broadhurst, I saw no wrestling. I saw people doing wrestling moves, perhaps, but I saw no wrestling at this clusterfuck, sir. Nothing of what I saw could be described as wrestling. There were wrestlers. I saw Megan Bain, and I was convinced I was watching wrestlers at some point or other, but there was no wrestling.
I mean, I thought the finish was well done.
The finish involved the child.
That child is over, goddammit.
I don't care how over the child is. Do I have to have Jim Cornette come on here and explain to you why no-legged men and children and dolls... Hang on, timeout. Objection from the prosecution. I am the prosecution. I'm objecting to myself because I'm tired and I've lost my mind.
I'm like Joey Janela booking the clusterfuck.
How many fucking times did the doll wrestle this weekend? How many, Gary? Answer the permission to treat the witnesses hostile. Your Honor. How many times did the fucking doll wrestle this? That doll got more airtime than Shinya Aoki. Explain it to me, Harry. Explain it to me.
I don't get Yoshihiko. You're asking the wrong person. I think it's fucking stupid.
when Jim Cornette complained endlessly about Kenny Omega wrestling the doll, the sex doll, I think he called it, I thought, well, this has to be a one-time thing. This fucking character gets more airtime than other GCW wrestlers. I'll never forget, during the lockdowns, when GCW started their outdoor series of shows to gently bring us back into wrestling as the lockdowns were happening, and Joey Janela, what's the stupid doll's name?
Yoshihiko.
Yoshijama, Hiroshima, what's it called?
Yoshihiko,
yeah. Kicked Yoshihiko into the ocean somewhere on the boardwalk in New Jersey. And this doll showed up in multiple events over the weekend. And was in
the doll wrestled Minoru Suzuki.
I used to have respect for Minoru Suzuki. I don't anymore. First he loses an encounter to Pat Mullen, God rest his soul, and then he puts over the fucking doll. Anyway, you want to have a serious discussion about the use of the fucking kid? And I don't care that it's Brody Lee Jr., and I don't care that AEW bent over backwards after his father died. It was a nice gesture. Certainly, in all seriousness, I'll stop doing my character now. He had lost his father. It was a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing to lose a parent when you're that young. And AEW crowded around him and cuddled him and gave him love. And I don't have a problem with any of that. A little bit of what they did with it, where he's kicking wrestlers and stuff. But it was like, okay, kid lost his father. I'm going to let this go. How many years ago was that? He's 14 years old now. He's not old enough to be a pro wrestler. Didn't we almost kill a kid in ECW with this sort of thing? Why are we doing this, Harry? Why? Why, I ask you?
Well, the kid in ECW was a 17-year-old who got gigged by New Jack, and anyone trusting New Jack to gig them is a fucking idiot to begin with.
Well, so I think there was some miscommunication there, but let's not litigate the fucking New Jack stabbing.
Yeah, we'll move on from the mass transit incident.
My point is, children don't belong in the ring having an active wrestling match. I don't care what performance art you think this is.
I don't fully disagree, but I think the clusterfuck is, as you said, not wrestling. I think that the clusterfuck isn't about the match.
Ouch, Harry. How dare you counter my argument with logic?
I think the clusterfuck isn't about match. It's about moments. And Brody Lee Jr. winning the clusterfuck was a moment.
Here's the only
that crowd went. That crowd went fucking crazy when he eliminated Joey to win the clusterfuck.
They would have went crazy if they allowed a live bear to win too, Harry. That doesn't mean a bunch of drunken idiots in the middle of the night at a wrestling show doesn't mean anything to me.
I would like to see the bear come back. I miss wrestling bears. Rest in peace, Tracy Smothers.
Then them shoot bears, and then there's working bears. You know what I mean?
Rest in peace, Tracy.
I will say this, and then I'm going to drop the thing with the kid because we'll be here forever if I don't. But it's not that I disagree with the idea of you have to create moments. And if you decide that the clusterfuck lives outside of traditional wrestling continuity in a side pocket universe where nonsense exists, I kind of buy that argument. My real issue, when 80-year-old men are doing fucking Canadian destroyers, I go, well, you're an adult and you made that decision, dumb as it is. And the promoters are all adults, and if you made that decision, dumb as it is, I support you. I support stupidity. I'm all for it. This is a kid, and you're dealing in dicey territory. Because if you hurt an old man, well, the old man was, asked to be there and was asking for it. You hurt a kid, it's child abuse. Period.
All right, well, let me ask you this question. Would it make you feel any better to know that the kid trains with Natalya and Tyson Kidd?
No. I didn't think he went in there utterly unprepared. Like, they got him out of fucking math. Like, come here. Where are you taking me?
They pulled him.
You're about to get clusterfucked. The hell I am. Ma! That's not what I understand. He's training as a wrestler, which I would have some issues with as a parent, but let us assume we're taking appropriate safety measures and they're not throwing the kid off a fucking roof. Fine, whatever. He's still too young to be wrestling that way.
I don't think he did anything that was above and beyond what you would expect a young trainee to do, though.
Because, okay, in defense of that position, yeah, they carefully. I mean, the poor kid fucking trip climbing on a rope, but never mind.
Granted.
You're 14, you're still a little awkward. I get it. My point is they took great care to make sure the kid wasn't going to get hurt. But what if there's an accident? What if there's, what if something goes drastically wrong in a way that nobody saw coming? Even with all the precautions they took, that's a kid in there. You put that kid in danger. And I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this. Then let me ask you this question. Do you feel that the same way about Izzy Moreno?
No, because at least she's almost 18. He's 14. And if you don't think there's a difference between 17 and 14, you and I have to have a different discussion.
That's going to end up one To Catch a Predator.
I mean, I'm the one saying the 14-year-old shouldn't have been in the match, so I don't know what you're thinking, but let's not talk about it.
There's a Rob Feinstein joke there somewhere that I'm going to avoid. Anyways.
I'm going to give you the last word on this because I've made you're not going to convince me otherwise
and that's fair.
As a parent and a social worker, a 14-year-old does not belong in that kind of theatrical performance, period. That is my belief. If you disagree with me, you're entitled to that. Give your final statement, and we're moving on from this.
Okay, so to your point, I don't disagree with you. I think Brody Jr. was too young to have been involved. Mm-hmm. I get the why. I don't agree with the how. Now, if you wanted to do something like that, have Megan and Joey eliminate each other, and then Brody's the surprise last entrant after everybody's out of the ring. He wins the match. Nobody's any the wiser. The kid still gets a pop.
If you want to do it where it's kind of... So there's a segment of the Clusterfuck, and this is hilarious to me. Because you ever hear somebody scream from miles away? I'm watching The Invisible Man. There are people watching this that
have no idea what we're talking about.
There are people who watch this because I have friends and friends watch me do my thing and they're interested in how I'm doing this, but they don't necessarily watch wrestling. So I have to say this for their benefit. There's an Invisible Man character in professional wrestling. And you're like, oh, how does the guy pull that off? It's not a guy. It's wrestlers imagining there's a real person there and throwing themselves hither and yon.
They're working themselves, yes.
The Invisible Man got more eliminations than Kane in the Royal Rumble.
I especially liked the elimination of Dan Barry. He even hooked the leg, brother. That was respectful.
Was that Dan the Dad?
No, he knocked the coffee cup out of Dan the Dad's hand. Dan Barry's the one.
Hang on, Dan the Dad chasing the Invisible Man with the belt was cracking me up.
Dan Barry was the one who got superplexed by the Invisible Man.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. So in the world of in the pocket universe of GCW, where there's no such things as physics or logic,
that checks out.
I know you struggle with culture, but there was an animator years ago named Tex Avery. Tex Avery did a cartoon where a dog
wasn't he the original voice of Bugs Bunny?
I don't know if he was the original voice, but he definitely worked.
He was a voice of Bugs Bunny.
He may have been.
Continue.
But he was anyway. So Tex Avery did a cartoon, very famous cartoon, where a dog gets kind of sick of humanity, as we all come to do at some point, and decides he's going to go to the moon. And on the moon, erasers are chasing pencils, and hydrants are chasing dogs. It is that universe in which the clusterfuck takes place.
That seems fair.
Okay. So in that universe where erasers chase dogs and erasers chase pencils and hydrants chase dogs, the Invisible Man eliminated a lot of people in this fucking clusterfuck. It was goddamn hilarious. And I have to say, the guys are all good sports about bumping themselves and throwing themselves hither and yon. It's funny to watch.
No.
You take it, but the point that I was getting to, and I said, have you ever heard a guy scream from afar? I'm watching the Invisible Man eliminate one guy after another and have better matches than some of these guys had the entire weekend of the collective. And I'm hearing Jim Cornette scream from Kentucky. Just absolutely lose his fucking mind. Because between the Invisible Man, the Kid, and the dog, you three-peated. You did all three things that drive Jim Cornette to the point of apoplexy. Jim Cornette's going to join the Houthis or the fucking, or some other Arab terrorist organization at the rate GCW is going.
I'm hoping it gets him to quit professional wrestling once and for all and does the whole world a favor.
Well, that's a bridge too far. I think he joins an Arab terrorist organization before he quits wrestling.
Did you hear? So I don't know if you're familiar with. There's a thing on Reddit Squared Circle called the Wrestling Observer Rewind, where there's a guy. His name is D Price. He goes back and looks at old issues of the Observer and kind of breaks them down as far as what they meant now, what the big happenings and stuff, puts them into his own words while still encouraging people to go check out the Observer. One of the things that he talks about is the fact that Jim Cornette had throat surgery and doctors have recommended that he rest his voice for 2 weeks. He made it 3 days.
That's my boy. So I have talked for 15 minutes straight about the clusterfuck. I'm going to take a breath and think about my life choices. Your thoughts, sir?
Realistically speaking, there are no thoughts when it comes to the clusterfuck, because if you try to put any semblance of logic on any part of this match, you're doing yourself a disservice.
I don't recommend it. It'll cause an embolism.
This is one of those matches. This is one of those shows. I mean, especially with Scramble Cage right before it, which is just fucking stupid in concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is one of those shows where you leave your brain at the door when you started. Because if you don't, you will have a coronary.
I showed my kids a lot of things. I showed my son the Show Me Your Tit scene from The Bad Lieutenant. I won't show them the clusterfuck. I love them too much. Do you have any commentary or review notes for the clusterfuck? Any issues? The Up girls had a good run at the beginning. Megan Bain was there and made me fall in love with her all over again. Anything else about the clusterfuck of memory of any note?
Yes, one thing did stick out to me. Viva Van is hot as fuck.
Which one's Viva Van?
The Asian girl.
Oh, because I was thinking about I love this. I know a lot of stuff doesn't survive the indies. Once you get to the WWE, they remake you in their own image. But I'm praying to God Swipe Right lasts all the way to the main roster.
They've kept their gimmick in Evolve when they've been on the Evolve shows.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping.
And then
I'm hoping someday they make it to the main roster and they're still called Swipe Right.
They just did a NXT taping against Fraxium as well too, and apparently had a hell of a match in the process.
Well, the chick that's with Swipe Right, whose name escapes me right now,
Zeta Steel.
Yeah, Zeta Steel's hot as fuck too, and she needs a main roster run.
That's the one that I said looks like a young Alexa Bliss.
Oh,
like Mean Girl Alexa.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's hotter than Alexa Bliss.
Let's not talk crazy here.
She has okay. Your spank fantasy is not my issue here. The woman has traditionally better looks than Alexa Bliss. Who am I looking at? Oh, her. Yeah, she looked like a wrestler. Yeah, I remember her. She looked like a wrestler, and that was my thought when she came out. I'm like, oh, good, somebody in the clusterfuck that actually looks like a wrestler.
That's Viva Van.
Okay, my other really, since you're not answering my question, you're being difficult.
Which particular question are you asking?
No, you missed your opportunity. Now I want to talk about Sleepy Joe. So Sleepy Ed, yeah. So Sleepy Ed comes out, and I don't know what else Sleepy Ed does besides sleep, but they got him a nice bed.
Well,
where he was molested in his sleep by that Gorgon from Juggalo Championship Wrestling.
Her name is Mickey Knuckles, and yeah,
that was fuck what her name is. Her name is Lose Some Fucking Weight is what her name is.
Technically her name was Sexual Assaulter number 6.
I'm sorry, what now?
I mean, did it not look like she was trying to fornicate on the stage?
That's what I said. I thought that was like a real gimmick name. I'm like, you're gonna have to explain now. Yeah, no,
No,
so this fat sloppy fuck who comes out with the Juggalo Championship Wrestling people. I don't give a fuck. Come at me, bro. I live in Tampa. Come find me.
I just want to state for the record that Mickey is actually a sweetheart outside of the ring.
All fat girls are. Listen to me.
Jesus.
So this group of fucking special ed students comes out, and
the views of Mark Radulich
are my own. And for this was Sleepy Ed, right?
Yes, Sleepy Ed.
And he's sleeping comfortably in the nice bed they made for him on this stupid stage. And
it was quite the bed.
And this fat ass jumps on top of him and starts wiggling her jiggly bits, and then gets off of him again. And it's like at any other time, this would be a felony. My God, man. But not in the Pocket universe, which is run by Tex Avery rules. But the clusterfuck exists. In any case, I didn't understand the Sleepy Ed thing because, like, the whole crowd got quiet and, like, they kind of dimmed the lights. And I'm thinking, and everyone's like,
sleep.
Yeah, they were letting him sleep. And I'm just like, ooh, are we going to get, like, a Fantasia-esque dream sequence within the clusterfuck? Because that I was into. It was like, oh, you know, are we going to get like a song and dance number perhaps? Are we going to do something with the lights? No, they just 2 seconds of let him sleep. And then we were back into the regular clusterfuck again. And I'm like, what is the point of this? So I don't understand this wrestler. Explain this wrestler to me.
I can't. This is my first time seeing him.
You have disappointed me.
I'm sorry. Not really. Okay. Although I will say that the idea of a dream sequence fight inside of the ring while a Sleepy Ed is on the stage is fucking hilarious and needs to happen.
Well, I'm hoping one of the interns listening to this will pitch that idea to the good people at Game Changer Wrestling. All right, Harry, I'm tired. And I'm sure Joey has. I'm tired and I have work tomorrow. Is there anything else you would like to discuss regarding the clusterfuck or any other part of the collective?
Honestly, not particularly. The only other show that I wanted to get the chance to watch that I haven't had a chance to watch yet, so I'll give quick thoughts on it next time we convene, is Progress, just because I always enjoy the Progress shows in the U.S. And I think there are a lot of Progress people who are making the jump. A lot of the guys that you see on the current WWE roster, Gunther, Pete Dunne, Timothy Thatcher, Tyler Bate, had runs in Progress before they came over. So Progress is kind of a star-making reputation over in Europe. So it's good to see it get an opportunity to be exposed to a larger American fan base here, much like they did when they did their tour a couple of years back. Plus, they're working with Jim Smallman again, who has left his job with the WWE, and Smallman was the guy that put Progress on the map. So it'll be interesting to see if they can recapture that magic of some of the earlier Progress shows.
Very good. Well, folks, I am Sleepy Mark. And this has been...
I'm still pretty well awake, Harry.
Fantastic. This has been our review of Game Changer Wrestling, the Collective Las Vegas 2025. We will be back on May 7th for a look at Action 7. Tell us about that in 10 words or less.
Tennessee promotion, Star Maker, lots of young, hungry talent.
Cool. Looking forward to it, as I always enjoy looking forward to you. Hopefully I will not be as exhausted, or a child won't wrestle in a match and get my dander up. So we'll see what happens.
I should probably let you know now the champion is 15. I'm kidding.
And we're out of here. All right. Tomorrow, I love you tomorrow. I will be doing a triple feature with Matt Kettner, Dorian Price, and Mick Wanamaker. We will be looking at comedies and romantic comedies all the same. We are reviewing Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, I tell you. The Life List and La Dolce Villa both can be found on Netflix, so that's what's happening then. I already talked about the show that was Monday. Sunday. We're doing another streaming catch-up. Myself and Jesse Starcher and Dorian Price will be watching Cleaner, Alarum, and G20, the unintentionally funniest comedy of the year. Monday, myself and Robert Winfrey allegedly will be talking The Electric State from the Russo brothers on Netflix. Next Wednesday, Myself and Alexis Hano will be reviewing The Bondsman, starring Kevin Bacon. And then finally, because Bailey. No, not finally, because I threw in an extra show. Shay Tate's back, and she's bringing Dorian Price, and we're going to be talking musicals, Harry Broadhurst, musicals. It'll make a little bit more sense in the clusterfuck. We'll be talking The Rocky Horror Picture Show, Little Shop of Horrors, and Jekyll and Hyde, starring David Hasselhoff.
Okay, flag on the play. If you're going to sit here and try to tell me that the Rocky Horror Picture Show is going to make more sense than the clusterfuck, I'm calling bullshit.
That at least has narrative flow. The clusterfuck doesn't. And then finally, a show that was delayed from last year because it got canceled, and I didn't want to reschedule it, and I thought Ronnie was going to take care of it, and then Ronnie went back to his home planet. So now here we are doing the fun high school in trouble movies. Finally, myself and Pat Mullen, we are talking The Substitute, The Principal, and 187 on an Undercover Cop. Yo, folks, I need to go to bed. Be well, be safe, and where are you? Be
Too sleepy.
hey.